Can we just stop pussyfooting? The reason CBS and its parent company, Paramount, is about to stroke a $16 million check to Donald Trump is not because they did anything wrong. It's not because they violated the First Amendment. It's not because they committed defamation of Donald Trump. The only reason the parent company is settling and tossing the Tiffany Network and its crown jewel 60 Minutes into the sewer, ruining its reputation forevermore, the network of Edward R. Murrow for news reporting, the reason they're doing it has a dollar sign attached to it. It is that they want to conduct a merger and an acquisition, and the transition plan, the succession plan, if you will, for the Redstone family is to sell the company to a company called Skydance, and they can't get regulatory approval because Donald Trump's people are holding it up in order for them to be able to extort $16 million out of CBS. It's a bribe. It's pay to play. We break it down for you on Legal AF. Here's a clip.
Let's talk about Paramount folding in this. In my opinion, it was perhaps the most frivolous case I've seen, and Trump has filed a lot of frivolous cases. He alleged that CBS, in their 60 Minutes segment involving former Vice President Kamala Harris in October of 2024, made an edit or two, and that caused him massive amounts of damage and emotional distress, he alleged. And he brought in Ronnie Jackson to be a co-plaintiff in the case, because Ronnie Jackson is from Amarillo, Texas, and Trump wanted to file this before the federal judge, Judge Kaczmarek, who's the only judge in Amarillo, Texas. So he has the Congress member from Amarillo join him and say that he was a consumer also who watched this and suffered emotional damage to see former Vice President Kamala Harris give this interview, which they said that CBS and 60 Minutes interviewed certain segments. First off, the edit that they made was kind of purely to keep the movement of it going. It was not it didn't change a yes to a no or a up to a down or anything even of any significance. They took out a few ums and ahs that she was saying, and it was a slower answer. Although the full interview was out there. The way the Trump people knew it is that in one of the other segments, whether it was on Face the Nation or how it was posted online, it looked a little bit different. From that one little segment, there was more ums and ahs. That was really it. Trump won the election, so what are his damages anyway? But he said that, and then he amended the complaint in February to say, oh, now his damages are $20 billion. What was really going on here is that Paramount, which is owned by the heir of, what do you say?
The Redstone family.
The Redstone family, it's owned by the daughter now, Sherry Redstone, who is Sumner's daughter. She wanted to sell her company to Skydance, a kind of a private equity hedge fund that gobbles up these companies. And Skydance is the son of the guy who runs Oracle. So you kind of had, one heir wanting to buy a company from another heir. And then Trump was basically not giving it the FCC approvals that it needed until a personal settlement was reached with Donald Trump in his own case for emotional distress. And so when we looked at this case, I mean, if anybody filed this case, you would get what's called Rule 11 sanctions. You would get laughed out of a federal court, and you would be treated as a vexatious litigant because it's just the most bizarre and deranged lawsuit. But they got the judge that they wanted, and then they kept on doing the delays every time the judge was about to make an order, because I think they even thought they might have lost with that judge. They would basically amend the complaint or ask for a delay, and in the background, they were doing their gangster tactics and applying pressure to Paramount to settle this thing. They went in front of a mediator. I don't know the name of this mediator. Mediation is kind of non-binding, informal, like negotiations that takes place. And basically, the mediator's job is not to rule, oh, you're right or you're wrong. The mediator's sole job is to try to make a deal. That's their job. And so the Trump regime was demanding $20 billion. And so the deal is, hey, Paramount, you want your approval to go through? Wink, wink. Here's what you got to do. Here's what's going to happen. Mediation is confidential. That's why they go and they do this mediation. And then they basically said, aha, we settled $16 million. We're going to give it to a future presidential library. And that's basically it. We're not making statements of apology, but we're just going to give $16 million. And then I guess that'll clear the way for the regulatory approval to take place. I mean, the Democrats say when they get power, they're going to investigate this as an unlawful bribe and a scheme. And the Democrats say, well, okay, well, you didn't. We're going to investigate Paramount and Skydance later. But, we saw some CBS hosts out there criticizing the decision from Paramount. But, you can address it. And then I think it's helpful that you then address Paul, the Paul Ingrassia guy in this analysis. But look, Popok, it's sad to say, but corporate news is done. They do good. They have some good reporters. Like there are some good reporters at CBS. There are some good reporters at Washington Post. There are some good reporters at New York Times. There are some great reporters out there who do good work. The issue is they're part of a corporate structure that will always sell out their work for the oligarch.
Yeah. Well, look, I'll just continue with that, and then I'll wrap it into Paul Ingrassi. CBS was known as the Tiffany Network for a reason. It was run by Bill Paley, a lion of the industry back in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. And 60 Minutes was the crown jewel of the Tiffany Network. But to Paramount and the kids of Sumner Redstone, which is right out of Succession last season, where this old line company with, making buggy whips and television shows, gets acquired by the newfangled Oracle, because this is their succession plan. They don't have a succession plan. Sumner died, Shari Redstone took over, and in order to cash out, they got to have a buyer. And Trump decided he was going to take their testicles, corporate in nature, in his hands and squeeze until they paid him the way ABC paid him, because George Stephanopoulos used one sex abuse term instead of another when he was asking a question. They shouldn't have settled either, but that set the precedent for CBS. And then you've got Brendan Carr, who is Donald Trump's bootlicker, who's now in charge of the Federal Communications Commission. I see statements coming out of some of these places, and I think I'm in the Soviet Union circa 1970. It's just like the Politburo, and it's propaganda, and you got the FCC guy or person saying things that are just totally political in nature, all to curry favor with Donald Trump. So they effectively told Shari Redstone, we are not going to approve a merger that any day and twice on Sundays would be ultimately approved, because Paramount and Skydance, there's no antitrust issues ultimately. This should have been closed a long time ago, but Donald Trump held it up using his lawsuit to extort a bribe, as you outlined it, from Paramount. And now, suddenly, after the $16 million will eventually be paid, suddenly there'll be regulatory approval. So there's many things that lawyers representing Donald Trump have violated their rules of professional responsibility by using these threats for an ulterior motive, the threat and the regulators too. And so that's something we'll have to keep an eye on. And you're right to open up that, not Pandora's box, but to open up that issue of when, not if, the Democrats take control of the House. And I don't mean that cavalierly. We have a lot of work to do. We have a lot of voting to do. We have a lot of voting registration to do. But should we do all of that, then the House should be a blue tidal wave. If that happens, it's going to be a considerable amount of time with real investigations, real articles of impeachment, and about these kind of things. I could see 2/3 of their time being taken up with those kind of things, along with helping the American people. So according to the reporting, it looks like there's a former judge of some sort, state or federal, that was appointed to be the mediator. You and I have been involved with mediators. What happens is they mediate the two parties, and the mediator does shuttle diplomacy back and forth. tries to use their own powers of influence and negotiation tactics in order to get the parties close. It looks like the parties weren't that close. And so the mediator, it's a technique in mediation. The mediator made a proposal. It's called, what else? A mediator proposal. And then they keep it open for a certain amount of times. This is usually right at the end when there's an impasse and they're far enough apart. Like Trump's at 100 million and CBS is at 5. The mediator says something like 16 is my number. Who's going to meet me there? And they give a certain amount of time without telling either side who met them there. But if they both end up at 16, agreeing to the mediator's proposal, the mediator will announce a deal. Like my number, he'll say to one side, my number 16. My number 16. Are you there? And then they'll say, we're there or we're not there. And if they're not there, you'll know whether you accept it or not. So you know who screwed you, but you'll never know. You'll never. Oh, so that's what happened. CBS, which has now completely thrown the crown jewel and the Tiffany Network into the trash. I mean, if 60 Minutes was a major asset of this company, it has been completely undermined by what Paramount just did on the way out. Skydance should be like, oh shit, I thought we were buying a credible news organization, CBS News, and its flagship magazine that's been on the air for 50 years. Now it's not worth anything. As far as I'm concerned, if I were the buyer, I'd be really pissed off about this. Bill Whitaker was literally, according to reporting, in tears. He's the one that did the interview. And so was the other major player over there. Who's the female that does a lot of their it'll come to me in a minute. But the reporters were just flummoxed by this settlement. And I've been watching 60 Minutes for a long time. And at the end of every segment, they say a version of, for the full interview, without editing, go to 60minutes.com, blah, 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 blah. That's what happened here. What the fact that it took Kamala Harris a minute and a half to make her point, and they shortened it to 30 seconds because it was a clip. But to Donald Trump, see, word salad. You would have what? You won the 7 battleground states. You won the popular vote. You won the election. It's like the suit against the pollster that's still alive in Iowa, who said, oh, she's up by 5 points when he was really up by 13. Who gives a crap at this point? But they do it to make a broader, all political point. Donald Trump's trying to destroy mainstream media. He can't get control of us. He can't get control of things that are independent. So he has to go after the corporate owners of mainstream media. When we say mainstream media, we generally mean they're owned by corporations where this is an asset on their books, and like Bezos owning Washington Post, the Asian business guy that owns the LA Times. The only thing that's like independent are papers like the New York Times, which is at least owned by one family. It has been for 150 years, but that's what we're talking about. This is just they're owned by private equity and hedge and the rest. And so at the end of the day, the settlement, they're trying to pat themselves on the back going, yes, 16 million. We didn't have to apologize. And we'll just put the full report out. But this so scuttles any of their press or First Amendment integrity. And like I said, if I was Skydance, I'd be like, you just shit all over 60 Minutes. And that was a major asset for us in the purchase. Welcome back. Legal AF, the podcast. Hopefully you know about it. We've been on the air for about 5 years. Just got our best ranking ever on YouTube. YouTube ranks podcasts now. We're number 22. That's all because of you. And that's regardless of genre. If you break it down to law and politics podcast, we're number 1. Again, I do my part. We do our part. My co-anchors, Ben Meiselas, co-founder there, and Karen Freeman-Ignifilo, we do our part on this side of the camera, but you certainly do your part, making our your journey and our movement come together. So take a moment, full-length podcast Wednesdays and Saturdays at 8 p.m. Eastern Time on the Midas Touch Network. And then we've got a YouTube channel devoted to it, Legal AF, the YouTube channel. Come on over there, nothing behind a paywall. Boom, hit the free subscribe button. So until my next report, I'm Michael Popok. Can't get your fill of Legal AF? Me neither. That's why we formed the Legal AF Substack. Every time we mention something in a hot take, whether it's a court filing or a oral argument, come over to the Substack. You'll find the court filing and the oral argument there, including a daily roundup that I do called, wait for it, Morning AF. What else? All the other contributors from Legal AF are there as well. We got some new reporting. We got interviews. We got ad-free versions of the podcast and hot takes. Where? Legal AF on Substack. Come over now to free subscribe.